Episode 3 was a really strong episode. We saw certain characters shine in positions we haven't seen them before. We had really spicy moments, really twisted and messed up moments, and overall it felt like it was going places faster than the first 2 episodes. So let's go through the episode character by character and see the interesting moments and development that made this episode so great. So let's begin with the most twisted and messed up storyline of them all so we can get it off our chest. So we pick up right where we left off with the Rus storyline, as Oleg, Ivar and Igor get away scot-free as it seems the little bluff worked. As they ride away, Oleg and Ivar talk quite candidly about what they'd just done, along with how he actually pulled it off by knowing the wife wanted to marry the brother because she actually was his own mistress. This conversation is quite important for Igor to overhear because he gets his first glimpse behind the curtain of how the different scheming and politics works. And specifically to his situation, he learns about Oleg's style and how he uses people and manipulates them. And as we progress into the storyline over the episode, we see how Igor starts to imitate and even see these two people as role models. It's totally fine for kids to have adult role models, but these two particularly adults probably aren't the best choice. So yet again, we get another scene of Oleg and Ivar kind of hanging out, drinking and talking about things. Oleg reaffirms he still wants to invade Kattegat and go west. However, he sees his brother's actions as too much of a threat, and he wants to clean house and make sure everything's down packed before he heads out. Now in this scene we get this like joking, kind of mocking way they talk to each other, they're having a bit of fun, they say he's a dog, not a lion, classic kind of banter. But throughout this episode we see Ivar really get increasingly concerned as he sees what kind of casually comes out of Oleg's tongue actually manifests into some very violent and dangerous things. Oleg's a man that speaks lightly, but definitely shouldn't be taken lightly. So Oleg orders the capture of his brother, brings him in, tortures him, and then degrades him down to the position of a dog in society. Now all in all, these actions from Oleg are pretty messed up, but it's not that really gets you. It's the fact that Igor is laughing along and kind of making fun of this person who's in this horrible, twisted situation. And one of my favorite moments is when they kind of zoom into Ivar's face and you could just see it go from the smiling happy and he realizes like, wait, this is really messed up. So not only will Ivar see Igor as something he can use to kind of have political power and control over this new region, but he'll also have this kind of weird moral feel that he needs to kind of take Oleg's influence away from this boy before he gets heavily corrupted and turns just as crazy as he was. Or at least that's the path I hope Ivar moves down throughout the season. So while we're on the topic of crazy, let's move over to Vikset's storyline, because he is batshit out of his mind. So in the first 2 episodes, we didn't get that much time with Vikset. We only kind of saw him in the background making comments here and there, and we didn't really get a feel of how deeply traumatized he is. Now I actually really liked a lot of the techniques they used to convey how he's feeling, how his mind is. On the beach, we see his hallucinations in full vivid form, and it's really kind of freaky. We also get to hear screams and loud thugs and the camera moving forward, backwards. It's all really sharp and chaotic. We even get this really nice scene where the people around him try to talk to him, help him, and he explains how he's feeling and what he's seeing. The part of note was definitely how he talked about how it's the place he's in that's kind of igniting a lot of these problems. He can see the spot where his mother was murdered, his lover was burned, and where everything went down to hell. An interesting theory that I've heard a lot of you guys talk about is the fact that he might kill Lagertha. When you see the sickly, weak Vikset who can't even like stand in the light without falling down, it seems like a long shot for him to be able to do any harm to Lagertha. But most of this is based off different prophecies. The one that Lagertha is supposed to be killed by a son of Ragnar, the fact that the seer said that Vikset would achieve something that no one else could, i.e. Ivar and Uber and stuff failing to kill Lagertha. And he seems to be the only one out of all the brothers that is still focused in remembering the death of their mother and holding Lagertha as the person responsible in their mind. So it'll be really interesting to kind of follow his storyline and his state of mind and see where that goes over the season. Now my favorite scene for this entire episode has to be when Uber stepped up to his role as temporary leader of Kattegat. Uber's been one of those characters that's kind of been growing slowly over the last few seasons, never quite being in the spotlight. It was always Ivar or Bjorn who was taking that role. But in this scene we saw how truly charismatic and inspiring he could be as a leader. He held a good presence, he could speak really well, he articulated his thoughts, got everyone on board and excited for big changes to happen in Kattegat. Oppose that to Bjorn, who's already making mistake after mistake, not only his love life and parenting, but also just basic ruling. The entire Lagertha storyline is a backlash from his poor decisions. So we can see this scene as a reminder of the continuation of his development from the previous season, when he managed to beat down the leader of the Danes and gain a bunch of support that way. Apart from his noticeable gaffe of assigning any kind of position of authority or importance to Viksid, which is clearly a mistake, he very much seems to be on top of things. In my mind, Uber's storyline is adventure and exploring to other places, but once he gets there, let's say North America, he's definitely going to be the one that has to take charge and lead, and this shows good promise. One other scene that was quite interesting that we got in this episode with Uber was the one with Lagertha and Trovi. Now there's a bunch of good plot development there as we saw their plans and how it's going to unravel, what's going to happen with their children, and we kind of get the sense that Uber not only shows up Bjorn as a leader, but in the love life he has a solid, important, mutual relationship with Trovi, something that Bjorn could not achieve, not only with just Trovi, but anyone it seems. However, it was pretty entertaining to watch Trovi kind of rip into him for a bit. The whole rant was a bit well dar and preachy, but in these kind of Viking times, well ahead of the curve. So Uber and Trovi leave their children with Lagertha, and then she finds out about the attacks on the nearby village from the men who were banished by Bjorn. I covered what could be happening next episode, what's going to happen with the characters involved here in my preview breakdown, so check that out if you haven't already. But this episode really drives home the fact that Lagertha will never be able to escape this fate of being the shield maiden, a fighter, someone who stands up and doesn't let people roll over on her. She feels tired and weighed down from the constant war and politics and fighting, but she realizes that this world won't let her relax. As many of you guys know, I'm quite a big fan of Harald as a character. I really enjoyed him in the last season. I've liked his character growth and the way he interacts with Bjorn and other characters, so I really like the fact that we got to see him in this episode, and we got a few interesting scenes. Right off the bat, we can tell he's been kept in some pretty horrible conditions, and he's not exactly having a fun time. Now the first scene we get with Harald when he's brought in front of King Olaf kind of shows us more about King Olaf's character, and it develops on him a bit more and how kind of twisted and crazy and philosophical he is, over really expanding on how Harald's feeling. The way that Olaf's actor carried the character, with all the small mannerisms like stroking the fur coat around him and talking to Harald like he's my philosophy lecturer trying to bait an answer out of me. Not only does it add a bunch of interest into the character and what he's thinking, but it makes him really mysterious and you don't know what he's going to do next. You can't really tell whether he's kind of putting on a facade that kind of hides his ambition in very normal Viking ways, or if he's actually this detached, Buddha-esque figure that's really just contemplating the different philosophies of the universe. Now he would seem pretty out of place and strange in Vikings, except he's actually pretty tame compared to characters like Oleg we have this season. I definitely got to say my favorite part of the entire encounter was when they were dragging out Harald when he was singing, and Oleg was kind of clapping along, thoroughly enjoying himself. The next scene we get with Harald is him in prison talking to Canute the dwarf, who we already know is a pretty entertaining prison guard from the time that Viksid was held here. So we're going to see more of that kind of iconic banter that was pretty fun in the previous season. We can see from Harald's kind of jovial spirit that he's not quite crushed yet. He still has life in him and definitely ambition. He realizes how desperate his situation is. He's willing to even offer his word to a dwarf to make him king, or at least a king. So Canute kind of realizes that Harald isn't really in a position to give him any offers, so he kind of turns him down, but then informs them on the way out that Bjorn has come to try and rescue him. Now I'm sure Harald would be actually pretty surprised by Bjorn showing up. He wouldn't expect him to actually help him, especially when his position's so dire. However, quite sadly for Harald, his mission isn't quite that successful. Now we couldn't see much of reaction from Harald when he found out the news that Bjorn was going to save him, but it was pretty ambiguous. The two people who supposedly was sent by Harald to ask Bjorn for help, both of them are quite suspicious this episode. Both of them get pretty nervous when Flatnose insists they stay with the party and raid with them, and when they're trying to swim up to the port, they both kind of swim to the side, getting out of the way of the fire trap before they know it's going to happen or they know they've been caught. So there's a couple possibilities that could be happening here. One, the people who were sent by Harald to try and rescue him aren't loyal and turned on him, or two, Harald never sent anyone to placate with Bjorn to try and rescue him. This is all a setup from Olaf to try and get Bjorn to come with an army to his lands. So the question becomes, why would King Olaf want Bjorn to try and raid his lands? And if you've seen some of the teasers from the next episode, you probably know already that he's got some big plans for both Bjorn and the entire region. And maybe by having Bjorn attack him and then beating him off and kind of humbling a bit, he gives him more negotiating power and more control in what happens next. So I'd love to hear what you guys think is the best storyline of Viking so far. Are you enjoying what's happening with Ivar and Oleg with all that crazy shenanigans happening in Russia, or is it more the Bjorn storyline or the Uber storyline that's caught your attention? And maybe even like 2 of you think the Lagertha storyline's the best part. Probably not, but maybe. So thanks for watching this review, and remember, Skål.